Hey, I'm Jen Strogatz, and this is Phila Live from the Philadelphia Globe. I'm about to talk to Bruce Warren, and he basically runs shit at XPN.
What do you love to do? I, myself, so rarely have the time to think about what I love to do because I am doing what I love to do all the time.
Hey, Bruce. Welcome to Phila Live for the Philadelphia Globe. Happy to have you. I'm excited to talk to you.
Happy to be here, Jen.
Cool. So, I know you have a sort of strange background in getting into where you are now, and I wanted to sort of hear more about that. You told me a little before, and yeah, I just wanted to see, how did you get into music?
Well, I mean, it starts like everybody else's story. You're young, you listen to the radio, or perhaps you listen to your parents' records when they play them in the house, and you kind of make a connection immediately to music. So I was born listening to the radio at a very young age. What can I say? My parents sort of exposed me to, my dad was a huge Frank Sinatra fan. And, my mom was, I guess she was into the, those singers from the early mid-50s, Bobby Rydell and Fabian and all those kinds of artists. And I had an uncle, my dad's brother, who lived down the street from us. And he was into R&B. So like on one hand, I'm learning about like all the great sort of like, the classics from Frankie and, the white guys singing, pop songs. And on the other hand, I'm getting exposed to all this great Black music. So I guess it was sort of a mix of all those things coming together.
So what did you do before you worked in radio?
So I got out of college. I graduated with a degree in elementary education. I went to Temple, and I thought, I was wide-eyed and, very, very thinking I was going to change the world, through the eyes of elementary school kids. But that didn't last too long, and I needed a job, and I wound up being a friend of mine worked in a restaurant in Philadelphia, so she wound up getting me a job working in the restaurant business. And I did that for a really long time, probably over a decade. And then I slowly but surely sort of made my way into the music industry. You asked, you said, you have a pretty strange background. So, I got into it because, like Jen, you're really into music, right? And, you probably know a lot about all these bands before a lot of your friends know about these bands. And I was always kind of one of those people, I would go to the record store, I would hang out, I'd buy the import records, that the guy behind the counter would tell me about. And my friends would always ask me, how did you discover all this great new music? And one friend of mine said, you should start a newsletter. You should just start it was essentially a fanzine. Is what I did. I started a fanzine and I started to write about music. And then after a couple of years, I was mailing out like a couple hundred of these things every month. And somebody said to me, you could probably get paid for this. And I was like, that's an interesting concept. And, I submitted record reviews and articles to the local newspapers. And after knocking on the doors a couple of years, somebody gave me a chance, and I started writing freelance and getting paid for it, which ultimately led me to meeting somebody who was the student music director at WXPN. He was a University of Penn student. He was in a local band, and we were friends. And one night we were hanging out in a club, and he said to me, "Hey, do you want to be on the radio?" And I was like, "Sure." And like, that's kind of how it worked. It was very serendipitous. I couldn't have planned it out like that. And literally, Jen, like the first night I was on the radio, I was volunteer for a couple of years before I started working at WXPN full time. First time I was on the air, I said, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get a job and get paid to do this.
So you loved it immediately? Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. You've been obviously with, doing this at XPN for a long time,
Yep.
for over 20 years or 20 years? How
Well,
long
it's
exactly?
actually, believe it or not, next fall is going to be my 30th year at WXPN.
Wow.
Yeah.
So my whole life.
Your whole life. Yes.
That's amazing.
I'm not shy. I'm an old guy, but age is only a number.
Absolutely.
Right. So yeah, I'm 60 years old, and I've been working at WXPN half my life.
That's amazing, though. I was just thinking about how much you have seen of the Philly music scene grow and evolve over 30 years. I mean, that especially I was thinking about the indie rock scene and the alternative scene, like in music. Back then it didn't have as much of a spotlight, I think, as it does now. So I feel personally like the indie scene is sort of having a moment right now. What has it been like for you to sort of witness the evolution of Philly music?
Well, it's been great. I mean, every generation has its own moment, right? Regardless of the technical things that are happening to sort of amplify, what's happening in the community musically. I grew up in Philly. I was born and raised in Philly, even though I live a little outside the Philadelphia now. I still consider myself a Philadelphian. I'm a huge cheerleader for the local music scene. So when I got into it, I guess in the mid 80s, sort of covering the local music scene for some of the local newspapers, it was as exciting then as it is now. There was a great indie rock scene, although it wasn't called indie rock. It was like college rock, right? Alternative rock.
Right.
There was a huge hip hop scene when hip hop started busting out of Philadelphia. The Five Spot, Black Lily, The Roots, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. The early days of hip hop and rap in Philly was insane. It was insane. So, I've been sort of blessed to sort of be able to sort of go through a few decades of Philly local music. And even before that, as a fan, the sound of Philadelphia started in Philly. It grew out of Philly. And there were so many amazing bands that, got radio play back in the day that rose to national prominence. When I was, 10 years old in 1968, the Delphonics, the Intruders, all these amazing R&B bands and soul music bands were blowing up.
Yeah.
And then you had the 80s, with a lot of mainstream bands that came out of Philly. The hair metal scene in the 80s here was insane, Cinderella, and it was great. So yeah, every generation, every decade has had its, has had its mostly ups, and I guess the recent time we're in, about, I think the recent time for me anyway, the timeline sort of is in conjunction with like the rise of Fishtown and Johnny Brenda's. Johnny Brenda's was like an epicenter of intense creativity in those early days, and a lot of it came through there. And I would go out, I would see a lot of bands, and I kind of, again in my life, sort of, looked up and said, "Oh my God, something incredible is happening right now." And a decade ago, that was the rise of that scene. But it's always been very cyclical, and there's been great music here.
Since starting in 91, World Cafe has become a really big station. It's become syndicated on NPR. It's branched out to Nashville. What's it like to sort of be, a place that's gotten as big as that, and, being started in Philadelphia, being a part of that as like a tastemaker, in music specifically, I think more so in the local Philadelphia scene. I feel like, just the fact that it's a part of Philly music history is so huge. So what's that like for you?
My first full-time job at the radio station was as one of the producers of the World Cafe. And it was a great opportunity as a music fan. I knew what it was going to, the value of it, potential value of it was for the musicians. But I also saw it as a way that I could sort of learn a lot about the industry. I mean, I didn't really know much about radio or how to produce or how to edit or how to mix or how to program. So I learned a lot during that time. It was absolutely amazing. You know, it's funny, Jen, I don't really reflect on, I mean, every once in a while I'll sit back and go, oh my God, I was involved in this incredible thing, but I don't really think about it like that. I guess, it's sort of like what I do, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's incredibly amazing.
It is.
But you know what, here's the other thing. I learned a lot about sort of like the industry, I learned, relationships are really important. I learned it's even more important to be really honest with those relationships. It's a business, when I remember when my kids were younger, I would tell them about all these bands that would come to the radio station. And like one of my sons always asked me, hey, did you take your picture with the band? I'm like, well, no, it's not about that, it's about like, helping them showcase their music. And so I've been blessed to be around, a lot of musicians, some of whom are very famous. But I never really thought about it like that. It's again, it kind of goes back to my, I'm a servant to the music, and that's what I'm here for.
So I'm curious, when deciding, obviously a ton of artists send you their music, their new releases, stuff like that. Like everyone wants to be played on XPN or on World Cafe. And how does your team go about choosing what's going to be in rotation, put into the rotation?
Well, I work with slightly different teams for World Cafe and locally on WXPN. I have a core group of folks who are part of the process in both, for both the World Cafe and for XPN. On the XPN side, all the main hosts, Kristen, our morning show host, she's our assistant music director. Mike Vasilikos, who's been filling in for Helen. He's our APD, and of course we got Dan Reed, our music director. Those three are, primarily, we're all music fans first and foremost.
Yeah.
Our days are filled with, oh my God, did you hear this record? Oh my God, did you see this video? We should think about playing this record. Or the opposite. It's like, oh, that's the worst song I ever heard, that kind of stuff. But it's a very collaborative process. There's a lot more people in the programming department. I mean, we have part-time hosts. We have music fans who work at the station. I mean, I have interns, like my interns will be like, hey, I just discovered this great new band and you should check them out. I'll be like, all right, I'm on it. So, we get, as you get pitched a lot of music to cover, to review, to shoot, your photographer, to write about, to play on the radio. But we're also always, like everybody is seeking out new music all the time. Mm-hmm. So it's a very collaborative process, and ultimately we make decisions, and you know what? It's all subjective.
Yeah.
Taste is very subjective, and we have a good sense of who our audience is and our role in sort of that music discovery process, mm-hmm. and we take it all very seriously.
Just like, what? Like, that's your work day? Cool.
Well, you know what? Listen, Jen, there is a business part to what we do.
I know, of course.
So yeah, I mean, but yeah, you're right. It's kind of like, for 30 years, I've been going to work every morning and I go, oh my God, I got the greatest job in the world. I get to listen to music and play music on the radio and put it on the web and make podcasts.
And help bands get seen that you really believe in, and then be around other like-minded people who are just as passionate as you are about music. It's awesome.
Yeah. No, it is awesome.
Yeah.
Totally. My dad fucking hated his job. Like he was.
What did your dad do?
He was a salesman, He hated his job. And I just remember growing up every day, listening to him bitch and complain. And like, he was so angry and so not happy. And I was like, that ain't going to happen to me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Well,
so.
good. I mean, you obviously succeeded in that. That's awesome. And I think, obviously, I think that's been sort of a good, you've been like a good role model for obviously for your kids, I think, and for lots of people, because I think your whole story is really inspirational. To me, it is, at least. So,
Thanks.
yeah, thank you. So, the Exponential Fest started originally as the singer-songwriter contest, like the weekend long contest for Penn at Penn's Landing, and it's grown into this, pretty big festival. What's that evolution been like for you to be a part of?
Absolutely amazing. I mean, it grew into becoming like this incredible signature summer event. I think it's really amazing that listen, we're a public radio station. We music is at the heart of our mission, right? And to be able to showcase so much incredible music that by and large commercial radio kind of ignores for the most part. And it's just I'm blessed to be a part of that scene. It's like listen, like that, much like that first night on the radio, it's like my calling, right? It's there's I'm a servant to the music, right? And it's like I'm honored to be able to be a part of an organization like WXPN and have an amazing team of colleagues at WXPN, and we're all in it for the music, right? We're all in it for the music. So it's been, there've been growing pains, there've been great opportunities, and mostly though it's for the fans and it's for the musicians, and to be a part of that has been absolutely kind of exciting and hard. I mean, I won't lie, it's a lot of work, but it's fun.
Of course. That's awesome. Yeah. Also, I noticed a few years in a row, Exponential Fest has fallen on the same weekend as the Newport Folk Festival. What challenges have you faced along with that falling on the same weekend? Because I mean, I know it's not really the same market, but a lot of the same artists play both. Have you faced challenges with that?
Only the first year we did it. But the artists and the agents actually thought it was a really smart idea.
Really?
Yeah, because when you're putting tours together, it's easy for bands to tour around one central geographically centered area. So, and in fact, it's no secret. I mean, we intentionally moved our festival to the same weekend as Newport, so we were able to be able to afford the bands, number one, because when they're traveling from Newport to Philadelphia, it's a lot less money to put a tour on than if they were coming from the West Coast to Philadelphia to do a one-off. So it's afforded us a lot of opportunities. Sometimes there's challenges. Bands will play early sets at Newport and then they'll be on later in the day in Philadelphia. So and that's happened a couple times. Bands have played the night before at Newport, and traffic, weather. They've been delayed, but the show is always going on. So, by and large, it's been a very positive thing.
Cool. What advice would you give to artists who do want to get onto the playlists and the rotation and get their new music put into the rotation? Unsigned artists and independent artists, like people you haven't heard before. What advice would you give to them to get put out there?
Good question. Write and record and play out a lot, because playing out is your calling card. If you're killing it live, people are going to walk away and they're going to go, oh my God, you need to see this person play.
Very true.
I think hey, listen, we're talking during the pandemic and it's totally fucked, right?
I know.
There will be an all clear at one point, and people will be able to tour again and play big clubs and small clubs. But but I think playing live is a really important thing. I mean, you know what, you because that's, you know, right now, like, nobody sells records, right? Streaming is really where the business is, where
For
the business
sure.
is, and is
Yeah.
heading increasingly more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you know, it's funny. When I love to talk to new artists about this, and one of the very first questions people always ask me is, "Well, how do I get my record played on the radio?"
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is, don't worry about getting your record played on the radio. Work on your art and your craft. Because if you write the best song, you know what? It'll find its way. I mean, yeah, there are traditional ways of getting your music to a radio station. You
Sure.
email the music director, you put a package in the mail, whatever. You hire a publicist, you hire a promotion person. You don't necessarily need to get signed to get your record played on the radio. But ultimately, I think what happens is, um, uh, a lot of new artists get sort of hung up on, how do I get my record played on the radio, when they should be getting more hung up on, how do I continue to get better at my craft,
Sure.
and how do I get better at performing live?
So too early in the process, you think they sort of like jumped the gun a little bit about the radio thing?
Yeah, well, yeah, and I get it.
Yeah.
It's like, if I was a musician, I want my record played on on the
Yeah, of
radio.
course.
That's the ultimate for many,
Yeah,
the ultimate, vindication of, like, your art, right?
absolutely.
But it's not the only thing, and I think it's easy to sort of get sort of sidetracked, by the business
Yeah.
of getting your record on the radio. You can find ways to get your music to a music director or a program
Right.
director. But if it's not going to be good, then,
There's no point.
or A, if it's not going to be good, or B, if it doesn't fit the format, like, if I get a record from a band that plays, metal, we're not going to play it on WXPN.
Right.
So that's the other thing to recognize. Radio stations do have audiences, and some are more freeform than others. Some are more focused more than others. So
Right.
it's important to also know who you're reaching out to,
Yeah.
if you want them to consider playing your record.
That's good advice too, to sort of think about who the demographic is for that specific station. I mean, yeah, you're not obviously going to be playing screaming metal, so don't
Correct.
send Bruce your screaming
Correct.
metal music.
Right. Pre-pandemic, so I usually get to work really early. I'm usually at work by around 7 o'clock, and there's only one other person, other than the DJs who are in the building, in the office, and it's my guy named Brian. He's part of our web team. He does all the, he's the guy who works under the hood on the website. He's our database guy. Brian is a screamo metal, like, fanatic. In fact, he's in a really amazing metal band called Sacrilegious.
Okay, I'll check that out.
And every morning when I come in, we usually get there at the same time. He's usually there a minute or two before me. He is always playing metal really, really loud. And it's great. It's great. It's like we have our moment of metal bonding. And I kind of go into my office, and he goes about his day. But yeah, it's cool. It's all good. It's rock and roll.
Yeah, totally. What do you think approaching anyone from XPN, any of the XPN staff, would be like do's and don'ts for artists? What would you say?
Oh, that's a really good question. Let me think here for a second. Well, number one, do recognize that we get approached by a lot of people, and please be patient. Speaking for myself, and it's representative of many of the programming folks who work at WXPN, I get 50 emails a day, at least, from labels, bands, individuals. I can't listen to everything. We can't listen to everything. We process a lot of, we process, it sounds like I work at a car factory. We listen to a lot of music at WXPN.
Yeah.
Everybody across the board, all the DJs, all the hosts. So, please be patient. Don't send us music that is not in our quote unquote really broad format.
Mm-hmm.
Don't spend a lot of money on paper and press kits because you can put everything on the web right now. Do reach out to us online, and be patient. Be patient. That's a key thing.
Yeah. What are your favorite artists like at this moment? And I also want to ask you, what are your top 5 favorite hip hop / rap artists? Because we both like that. So
That's a tough one.
I want to know.
Well, you know what? Listen, I have a couple So this is really hard for me to answer because I like so much different kind of music.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge classic rock fan. Obviously, I grew up during that era. I always say they don't call it classic rock for nothing. I think the 70s was hands down the best time of music in the world. Maybe edging into the early 80s when hip hop started coming a little bit more prominently. My number one favorite artist is Bruce Springsteen. All right. They don't call him the boss for nothing. I'm a huge Clash fan.
Mm-hmm.
A huge Neil Young fan. Jackson Browne, Joni Mitchell are the best singer-songwriters ever. And for me, that's sort of like the barometer, right? Like if you're a singer-songwriter, boom. I'm sorry to say.
With Joni Mitchell, I agree with that one 100%.
But like, listen, there's an incredible, Jeff Tweedy of Wilco is an amazing singer-songwriter. Conor Oberst is an amazing singer-songwriter. Kathleen Edwards, an amazing singer-songwriter. Sufjan Stevens, amazing singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
Like, I think some people don't think of those people as singer-songwriters, but there is a whole new generation of singer-songwriters who are absolutely amazing. Lucinda Williams, unbelievable singer-songwriter, right? So, but at the end of the day, when I go home and I want to put a record on, it's The Boss or The Clash or A Tribe Called Quest. I'll now move into the hip hop world.
Yeah.
So, I don't have a top 5. Tribe are unbelievable. Eric B. and Rakim. I listen a lot to Eric B. and Rakim. I listen to Gangstar a lot.
Oh yeah, Gangstar.
Public Enemy. I'm an old school guy. I'm an old school hip hop.
No, I know. I forgot about Gangstar.
And I will, I'm a huge Drake fan.
Me too.
Believe it or not, I think Take Care is probably one of the greatest albums of the last, it's almost 10 years, I think, or 12 years. I used to be a Kanye fan, not anymore. Dark Twisted Fantasy, one of the greatest albums ever made. I think Dark Twisted Fantasy, records like Dark Twisted Fantasy, OK Computer by Radiohead, Talking Heads Remain in Light, Bruce Springsteen, The Wild, The Innocent, and East Street Shuffle. These are freaks of nature. These are such, the first Tribe record. These are like incredibly creative, artistic records that have held up completely.
Iconic. Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
So, I am a huge Radiohead fan.
Yeah.
I will see them every time. I will go anywhere and see them everywhere they go. I'm also.
Did you see Tom York's new song recently on the Tonight Show or the Daily? No, you didn't. Oh, check it out. It was really beautiful.
I will.
First time playing it.
I'm a Tom York solo fan. Tom York needs Radiohead.
Yes.
For me.
Sure.
LCD, huge LCD fan. Huge Tame Impala fan. I would have gone to see Tame Impala like 100 times if they would have continued the tour.
I don't know if I knew that or not, but I just clicked on a Tame Impala link earlier just for no reason. And I'm not I haven't really listened to them that much, but maybe I knew that about you and that's why I clicked on the link. I don't know. Yeah.
War on Drugs, huge. You know what? Like everybody says, like rock is dead. Well, fuck that. There's a lot of great rock, and War on Drugs is a prime example of that.
Yeah.
I have my favorites. I'm also a huge Steely Dan fan.
No, I feel like there's, also been a lot of awesome, you mentioned this, but just a lot of really good rap that's come out of Philly. What do you think of Meek Mill and Lil Uzi Vert? I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I think they're great. I love them. I've seen them both a couple times. I think they're, really, I love what they do. there's, just like in any genre, in many genres of music, there's a whole world of hip hop that, radio listener fans won't be exposed to because, like commercial radio, rock radio, there's a lot of limitations on what commercial radio stations will play, which is a shame because, there's equally as much great rock music being made and singer-songwriters out there as there are, hip hop and rap and jazz artists as well,
Totally. Oh yeah. Majorly.
And that's why I love the internet, right?
I know.
So,
it's a great invention. But yeah.
You can discover a lot of music in that regard.
Well, I'm glad to know all of that. I didn't know who your favorite artists were or anything like that, but I'm glad to know. And this has been really cool finding out all this stuff about you, Bruce.
Okay.
Thanks for talking to me.
All right. You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this exciting thing that you got going on.
Yeah. I'm so happy to have you here in this virtual space that we have here.
All right, Jen, you take it easy. And
all right, Bruce.
All right.
Okay, talk to you soon. Have a good day. Okay, well, that was amazing. That was Bruce Warren, the program director and on-air host at XPN at World Cafe. He's brilliant and has been in the music industry for over 30 years, my entire life, and he is like talking to, I'd say, a human Buddha, for as far as I'm concerned, really. So thank you, Bruce, for being on the show. Loved having you. Always such a pleasure to talk to you. Always leave feeling so motivated and inspired by your whole journey. So that was Bruce Warren from WXPN. And this is Phila Live from the Philadelphia Globe, and I am Jen Strogatz, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.